Well, welcome everyone. I'm Palmer McIntyre with the Great Trails State Coalition, and this is our Cities, Towns, and Counties for Trails Working Group. We have a special series that we're starting of presentations from the Great Trails State Conference, which was back in September of 2024. We had so much great content. We wanted to create a resource library for everyone to use. So today we are featuring the Downtown Greenway, Greensboro, and their partnerships, effective partnerships for trails. And they have a great presentation for us. We have Chelsea Phipps and Dabney Sanders. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Great. Thanks, Palmer.
Thank you. I'll just get the slides going here. There we go. I guess thumbs up. Is that showing okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Palmer, for that. Just a quick intro of myself, and I'm going to turn it over to Dabney to really get us started here. But my name's Chelsea Phipps. I'm the Greenway and Gardens Program Coordinator with Greensboro Parks and Recreation. And so sort of serving as the representative from the municipal side or the City of Greensboro side as we talk about this public-private partnership that is and continues to be the Downtown Greenway project. And we'll talk all about the history of the partnership and some success stories and a little advice if anyone's embarking or considering something similar. Dabney?
Great. Yes. And I'm Dabney Sanders. I'm the project manager for the Downtown Greenway in Greensboro, and I work for Action Greensboro, a local nonprofit here that works primarily on economic development issues for the City of Greensboro. So let's jump into the slides. We want to just give a little overview of what we're going to talk about today, talk a little bit about then and now, how the project started and where we are today. We'd like to give you a visual tour of parts of the Downtown Greenway, including the features and amenities that we think make it really special, so you get a feel for that. We're then going to dive into the public-private partnership, which is a big part of what today's session is about. Spend a little bit of time on that, how that is working, has worked, and is working. Talking a little bit about the funding and history of the project, and then what's happening today, what the current oversight of the project is. And then spend a little bit of time talking about programming, because programming has been such a big part of how we have kept the community involved and engaged and excited about this project as we have been working on it since really since 2001. And then some ideas about continued success, and then we'll have a little bit of time, I hope, for Q&A. So a little bit about the history. The Downtown Greenway is a 4-mile urban loop that's a multi-use shared path. It not only encircles and defines downtown Greensboro, but it also really expands the perceived footprint of downtown as we encourage infill development along the Downtown Greenway. There were many reasons that Action Greensboro was interested in pursuing this project. It was a part of a master plan that was developed for Center City in 2001. And we knew that it would drive economic development in our community. And we really based that on a number of studies that had been published across the country. There were other greenways in other parts of the country that were having success with attracting private economic development. And so we had a sense that that would happen in Greensboro, and it has. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that was really the primary driver for Action Greensboro being interested in this. Of course, we were excited about the possibility of providing a beautiful, safe facility that would encourage people to lead more active, healthy lives. We knew it would be an amenity to our transportation system, allowing us to really provide a complete transportation system. We also really wanted to tell the community stories with this Downtown Greenway, and we decided to do that through featuring significant public art throughout the 4-mile loop, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then we had some opportunities to reuse some either outdated or underutilized infrastructure. And I'll just mention the two significant pieces of that. There are more, but on the western side of that loop, we had a railroad corridor that was operated by Norfolk Southern that was serving only one commercial user on that line when we were in the planning stages for the Greenway. And we thought that we could put that underutilized rail line into better use through the Greenway. And we finally made that happen after many, many years. And then on the east side of the downtown Greenway, Murrow Boulevard is a 6-lane divided highway that was built in the 1970s, intended to be a vehicular bypass around downtown Greensboro. And the east side of it was built, and there was some right-of-way purchased along the north and the south edges of downtown to continue that, but it did not continue. And so therefore, people have often wondered on Murrow Boulevard why you've got this 6-lane divided highway that isn't particularly well used and seems sort of out of place in a downtown environment. So after lots of planning and community engagement, we ended up breaking ground on the first section of the downtown Greenway in 2009, and that's a section we called 5 Points. So if we move forward to now, I'm jumping way ahead from 2009, but we now have 3 miles open, and the final mile is under construction. We started construction on that in January of last year. And we are expecting that construction to be completed in late 2025, end of this year, which will complete the whole 4 miles. So that's super exciting, a major milestone for us. And just to give you a sense of how people are using it today, in 2024, we had over 118,000 trail usage counts. We had over 3,000 participants in our programs and events. And that they were participating in 186 individual program occurrences. We have some kind of one-time programs that happen, as you'll hear from Chelsea later, and others that are recurring. We worked with 134 different community partners in 2024, and we had 207 volunteers that contributed 572 hours of service for us. So really significant engagement from the community. This project is a $54 million project. When you're working in an urban environment, you end up spending a lot more money on infrastructure and upgrading underground sewer systems and that sort of thing, in addition to getting the trail on the ground. That $54 million includes $14 million that we raised from the private sector, which we're really proud of. That has come from a lot of individuals, businesses, corporations, foundations, and then the remainder of that $40 million has come from the public sector, and that has come from some local bond funding. We passed 2 bond referendums here in Greensboro, one in 2008 that was a transportation bond referendum, and then another in 2016 that was a Parks and Recreation referendum. The city then used and really leveraged that local funding to secure funding from NCDOT as well as federal highway funding. And as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing the impact of private economic development that's coming because of the downtown Greenway. And we're seeing over $650 million in projects that have come. And that number continues to grow, and we are really excited and proud of that. And I think that's one of the big successes of what we've done here. So this gives, this is you. Sorry, Chelsea.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Tag.
Yep.
It's a little different when we're virtual.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with the downtown Greenway or have not visited it in Greensboro or not for a number of years, just to give you kind of an overview of what Dabney was just describing, this map shows the downtown Greenway loop You'll see everything that is in a solid color line is complete and open and actively being used. That former railroad corridor that she mentioned on the western side of our loop is the dotted line here, and that's currently under construction. So we'll be right around 4 miles when it's all said and done. Hopefully this year, we can say this year now, we're in 2025. And so you'll see we have these 4 white circles on the corners, roughly, are what we call our cornerstones. Those are significant pieces of public art that really bring, some of the important stories of Greensboro's history to light. So starting in the northwest, going clockwise, we have our tradition cornerstone, innovation cornerstone, freedom cornerstone, and motion cornerstone. And so those relate to things like tradition cornerstone, looking at Greensboro's past and pivotal role in the Revolutionary War, innovation, looking at Greensboro's rich textile history, freedom cornerstone, looking at the Underground Railroad, as well as the sort of the civil rights, the sit-in movement that started here in Greensboro with the 4 students at the Woolworths counter. And then motion cornerstone sort of has 2 meanings, more of a figurative meaning in terms of education and the solid foundation that a good education can help you with moving ideas forward. And Greensboro is blessed with 7 higher education institutions, as well as motion more literally in terms of Gate City and being a real hub of railroad activity and kind of a transportation network, the Gate City that we are. And so the next slide here, just to show you a visual, because a map is one thing, but these are some sample photographs of different parts of the downtown Greenway. You'll see just across these 9 photos, they're kind of unique and different from each other. And you can be traveling along even within a 1-mile section along the Northern Passage or the Western Branch that's under construction. It changes every quarter to half a mile. You'll see very different kind of traits, field characteristics of the path, depending where you're on it. We also have a number of sort of pocket parks, if you like, or gardens, specialty plantings along the way. So in the top middle, you'll see Lo-Fi Park, which is a very popular spot. On the left of the middle row, you'll see 5 Points. It's one of my personal favorite sections. It's not roadside adjacent, and in lush summertime, you see beautiful mature oak trees, and you really don't feel like you're downtown at all. And then you could be, our public orchard is the very center photo. The bottom row middle photo is High Grove, which is a new installation that went in 2023 that just provides a little secondary pathway with some beautiful permaculture design plantings and native plants and herbs and trees. And so there's a lot to see and enjoy along the downtown Greenway. And of the 3¼ miles that are currently open, you'll get a very different experience in various sections. So some of those features and amenities, as Dabney said, that really, we often hear from people, make the downtown Greenway unique. The first being, of course, our public art. We have 40 pieces of public art currently, with another, probably 12 or 15 to come on that section that is set to be completed this year. Excuse me, the parks and gardens, as I mentioned, we have benches throughout, a number of drinking fountains that provide access both for our 4-legged friends with a little dog height water fountain, and then a standard and accessible drinking fountain access. We have a number of bike racks throughout, excuse me, and fix-it stations. So as you'll see in one of the photographs, we have 3 repair stations. While many use them for bicycle repairs, we find they're also very helpful for those who need to pump up a tire on their stroller, maybe fix a loose bearing on their skateboard. And so they've been really universal fix-it stations for our users. One of our sections in Moorhead Park has solar lighting, and we have what are called buyer retention cells or eco gardens. And all of our roadside adjacent sections have a series of tree wells along the way. We have close to 180 of them total. And they're actually a sort of stormwater treatment facility. It's a very innovative way to naturally filter the heavy rainfall we get in Greensboro, help it dissipate into the water table, and it kind of alleviates our storm drain system. There's a plethora of signage along the way. So if you want to come and explore on your own, you can certainly stop and read about the 8 neighborhoods that we pass through, historical photos, prominent residents and quotes and information about Greensboro's history, as well as the Downtown Greenway itself and all of the public art that you're seeing along the way. And 3 little free libraries for people to access and enjoy. So again, sometimes pictures worth more than words, right? So starting in the top left, and I'll go clockwise, this is Wovenworks Park, one of our cornerstones. This is the one looking at our innovation in terms of our textile history. Greensboro once being the world's largest manufacturer of denim and home to a number of prominent mills. Moving along, you've got energy abstracts. We joke that everything on the Downtown Greenway is a piece of public art, and that includes our utility covers. So this is a water backflow preventer that is required next to our drinking fountains. It's always sort of a not so aesthetically pleasing gray box that has to be right in the way. But we have commissioned an artist to paint those with these beautiful mandala type pieces. We have some special features like bridging the gap. This is underneath the Freeman Mill bridges along Spring Garden Street. It's at our Moorhead Park Trailhead parking lot, and very colorful piece by Darlene McClinton. Moving down, no, I'm going clockwise. Bottom right, so we have Recycle, one of our bike racks. This is a fun one. It's made from recycled bicycle parts. Some of them are still active. You can kind of move the wheels and the gears, but functional in terms of being a bike rack. Little free library, again, adorned with painted artwork on them. And then in the bottom left corner, ending with Daydreamers at Play. This is one of our neighborhood benches. So I'll just say real quickly, because we could have a whole presentation on just our public art, but that's not today's purpose. Our bike racks are all commissioned by local artists to the Greensboro Triad area. Our neighborhood benches, these are pieces that were commissioned specifically for each of the 8 neighborhoods the Downtown Greenway passes through. This particular one represents the Dunleith community, and the artists are all North Carolinian artists, and they are required to do engagement to learn about that particular neighborhood, their character, their values, their history, their architecture, and create a piece that speaks to that community. And so that one there definitely does that for Dunleith. And then our cornerstones and special features have been national calls for artists. And so artists represented from all over the US for some of our larger pieces. With that, I'm going to pass it back over to Dabney, because of course today's real focus is going to be on the public-private partnership between Action Greensboro and the City of Greensboro, and she'll kind of take you through that history timeline in a little more detail.
That's great. Thank you, Chelsea. And these next couple of slides are a little text heavy, so I'm sorry about that, but we did want to get some of these details in, and knowing that it might be something that people could refer back to. So as I mentioned, Action Greensboro commissioned a master plan for Center City back in 2001. And the Downtown Greenway was identified as a part of that master plan. Action Greensboro did a lot of community engagement meetings to determine if this was something, one, that the community wanted, and two, if this was something that we actually really thought we could do. It was a pretty bold, ambitious idea at the time. The foundations committed $4.5 million in seed funding that allowed us to explore the idea of this project between 2003 and 2005. Action Greensboro also commissioned a trails master plan for the City of Greensboro, and that was done in 2004 and 2005. And that master plan really identified all of the assets that the City of Greensboro had at the time. They were maintaining about 80 miles of trails, and it then recommended the addition of about 400 miles of trails to complement what we already had. And the Downtown Greenway was identified as the central hub of that entire trail system within that master plan. That ended up being called the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, the BiPed Plan as we call it, which was originally adopted in 2006 and has continued to be updated since then. And then we had a really big milestone in 2007. The City Council in Greensboro adopted a resolution of support for the project. Prior to that, Action Greensboro had really been sort of driving the project on their own and had been bringing in city staff and city council members when they sort of needed to, but we didn't have a formalized partnership with the city. So getting that resolution of support from the city was really important in '07. Action Greensboro hired the first dedicated staff person to manage the project in 2007, and that was me. So it's hard to believe I've been doing this since then. And then that was really spurred on because the City of Greensboro was celebrating its bicentennial, its 200th birthday in 2008. And so the city council started thinking about how do we want to celebrate that occasion. And they appointed a commission that planned a whole year-long series of events. They also wanted to name a signature project, a project that you could look back in, let's say, 50 years and say, oh, this is how Greensboro chose to really honor and celebrate that important occasion. And the Downtown Greenway was adopted unanimously by the Bicentennial Commission and subsequently City Council as the signature project. And that happened in 2007. So we'll move on to the next group of activities. Another major milestone was that a bond referendum that I mentioned earlier in the amount of $7 million was on the ballot and was overwhelmingly supported in 2008. And at that time, we also hired a part-time person to manage our programming and communications. As we were getting close to beginning construction, we knew that we really needed to ramp up the activities that we were doing in order to continue to engage that really important community engagement with us. We did hold our first groundbreaking in 2009 and opened that first quarter-mile section that we call 5 Points in 2010. And then the next quarter mile that we call Moorhead Park was under construction in 2011 and 12 and opened in 2012. From when that first section opened in 2010, the City of Greensboro's Parks and Recreation Department was responsible for handling maintenance of those open sections. And that began right away and has continued since then. In 2011, we signed a formal memorandum of understanding between Action Greensboro and the City of Greensboro. We had kind of been working off of some verbal agreements prior to that. Really felt like we needed to get something down in writing so that as city staff changed or city council members changed, and as our staff could potentially change in the future, we wanted a guideline that really dictated what the private sector paid for and what the public sector paid for, and sort of what our process was for that. Action Greensboro launched a major gifts campaign in 2011, and we ran that through 2012. Our goal was to raise $2.5 million. We ended up raising about $5 million, which was terrific because the project, of course, has taken a lot longer and cost a lot more money than we had originally envisioned back when we set that campaign up. And then, as I mentioned, the city secured state and federal funding that in 2012 exceeded $18 million. So a huge boost to our support of getting this completed. And additional sections were designed and construction and opened from that 2012 date all the way to the present. Then I also had mentioned earlier the additional Parks and Recreation bond in 2016, and that dedicated another $7 million in local funding. We had one of our most significant achievements in 2019 with our successful rail banking negotiation with Norfolk Southern for that final mile. We had begun discussions with Norfolk Southern in 2003. And I know probably a lot of you on the call have had experience working with the railroads. It can be a frustrating and long-term effort. We were patient through years of Norfolk Southern not wanting to talk to us or city staff, change in personnel. We finally, after all of that time, were able to negotiate that deal in 2019. The City of Greensboro's Parks and Recreation Department hired specific maintenance crew members for the Downtown Greenway in 2021. And that was really a part of, we began some transition discussions in 2020, thinking about as the entire 4 miles is complete, Action Greensboro, of course, will step away from the project, and the City of Greensboro will take on that full ownership. And so as a part of that, the city made a commitment to have a dedicated group of crew members who were only focused on the Downtown Greenway, which I will say has been incredibly effective for us. In 2021, we also launched what we called the Final Mile campaign, in which we raised over $1 million to complete the private sector commitments that we had. And we, as I mentioned just a second ago, we started discussions about that future transition once it was complete. As a part of that, the city hired Chelsea Phipps as the first program coordinator in 2022. And we really transferred the oversight of all of our programming and communications and volunteer coordination to the City of Greensboro through Chelsea's position. So our final slide about the public-private partnership, the Downtown Greenway maintenance crew expanded to 4 full-time staff in 2023. And we had additional MPO-directed federal funds secured for that final mile construction in 2023, which allowed us to begin that construction in early 2024. Also last year, there were some additional part-time staffers hired by the city's Parks and Recreation Department, 2 maintenance crew members, as well as a programming assistant to assist Chelsea in her work. And as I said, following completion, that full transition of the Downtown Greenway management will go to the City of Greensboro, expecting that to happen in 2026. So I think, Chelsea, you're going to talk about current oversight.
Yeah. Thank you, Dabney. And I know at the end we'll have time for some questions, because obviously there's a lot of layers that Dabney covered in 10 minutes, 15 plus years in 10 minutes. So lots of time for questions at the end of this. But just a few slides to kind of wrap up where we're at today, and a little more about the Parks and Recreation contribution to the partnership, I guess. But our current oversight, as far as day-to-day operations and management, we really look at the Greensboro Parks and Recreation Department. We oversee the maintenance and operations. So that is now a crew of 4 full-time staff members. It's a supervisor, 3 full-time crew members, and 2 part-time crew members. The programming and volunteers and communications, that's handled by myself as a full-timer and 1 part-time assistant. And then through Dabney's role in the Action Greensboro office, she, of course, oversees, as our project manager, everything related to the project management, construction, working with the various city departments for the technical side of things, all of the public art, as well as our overall finances, donor relations, and things like that. So really, kind of day-to-day, Dabney and I serve as sort of the 2 public-facing team members, if you will. We joke that we're each other's closest colleagues. We talk daily all the time. And we work for 2 different organizations in 2 different sectors, the private and the public sector. And that just goes to show about the success of the partnership. And I should also say here that there are a number of others. We have probably 10 different city departments that are actually part of this City of Greensboro partnership. We have 4 volunteer committees that we have an oversight committee, a technical team, our public art selection panel, and our finance committee. And so there's a lot of representation from the city, whether it's transportation, water resources, engineering and inspections, and so on and so forth. So while Parks and Rec kind of handles a lot of that day-to-day public side, there are so many on the city side that I want to make sure are acknowledged. And so Dabney alluded to the robust programming that we've been able to offer on the Downtown Greenway for the last, well, I guess it's been 15 years because we're going into our 16th annual Run and Block Party this year. I was very fortunate that when I started in my position, again, part of that transition was to be sure that the programming and engagement and activation was a seamless transfer. And so Laura Lorenz, who was in a similar role with Action Greensboro, when I started, we literally overlapped for 2 weeks, taught me everything she knew, and we were able to continue it for the public to really not notice much of a change except who to contact. As Dabney mentioned, though, we are only able to put on everything we do with the help of a number of community partners. So this could be local businesses, various nonprofit agencies. We're working with the Piedmont Bird Club or the Audubon Society. We're working with Deep Roots Market to host a program. We're working with people that offer inside venue support. If we need a little more space, then we can offer outside on the Greenway itself. So whether they're offering their expertise, their physical resources, financial, human resources, through sponsorships and otherwise, we have a ton of support from community partners. And our programming is really offered across 5 main pillars, as you'll see here: arts and culture, environmental education, health and wellness, social gatherings, and youth programming. In addition to our 3 annual signature events, which you'll see pictured here. So the first Saturday in May, which is May 3rd of this year, it will be our 10th annual Wheels on the Greenway. That's a big, celebrating wheels of all kinds. So bikes, trikes, skateboards, roller skates, strollers, you name it, scooters. And we have a number of partners that come out and offer demonstrations, helmet giveaways, safety briefings, bike repairs, a whole bunch of things to do with wheels of all kinds. Our Run and Block Party, the 16th annual edition, will be September 27th. It's always the last Saturday in September. It's an afternoon run, so you don't have to get up at 6 a.m. And it is a 5K and a 1 mile along the open sections of the Greenway, and then a big block party open to anyone to attend. And then our community picnic, we're entering year 3 or 4, depending if you count a rain out, but that's a newer one of our signature events. We haven't quite set this year's date, but as you can see from the photo, the intention there is to model the outstanding in the field concept, if you're familiar, and really bring people together for a communal meal, some music and fellowship, and time to gather in a scenic setting on the Greenway. We offer guided tours, both walking tours as well as golf cart tours. And we also just, I have to say last year in the fall, as we launched our new website, please be sure to check that out. We launched an audio guide. So it's a self-directed audio tour through the app called Autocast, OTOCAST. It's linked from our website so that you can download the app free on Android or Apple devices, turn on your location, and as you walk or explore the Downtown Greenway and you come across a piece of public art or a point of interest, the app will start to give you an audio telling of the history of the piece, of the artist, etc. So it's a fabulous way to get out and explore on your own as well. And then, of course, our volunteer opportunities. So our volunteers really help with our environmental sustainability efforts in our pollinator garden, public orchard, stream cleanups, litter pickups, things of that nature. And we really couldn't do it without them, as I'm sure you all know the importance of volunteers. Again, just to show a few pictures. So we have everything from canvas painting classes, outdoor fitness classes, bird watching walks, children's story times, goat yoga, bicycle repair workshops, Yappy Hour, which is the party for the pups, conveniently next to Joymonger's Brewing, where you can bring a beverage into Lo-Fi Park. Speed friending has been a new popular one that we're going to be continuing, and just everything under the sun. If it's unique and impactful and of local interest, we're going to give it a go on the Downtown Greenway. You'll see our spring 2025 calendar is going to be populated on our website in the coming week or two. So you'll see a whole new slate of things that are really picked back up. March kind of starts our busy season. March through October is the majority of our programming. And then I'll let Dabney kind of wrap us up as far as how we've been successful all these years.
Sure. So yeah, Chelsea and I were really talking about wanting to share some kind of key takeaways for thinking about long-term success with a public-private partnership. And I think establishing that MOU early to create really a foundation for collaboration and some sort of clear directives and a clear framework for how that could happen. It's a document that we can go back to. Again, as I said, regardless of changes in personnel. Also, I think our transition planning and having this gradual shift of responsibilities has been important in this success. And ongoing conversations that really reinforce the value of public-private partnerships. As Chelsea mentioned, we work very closely together, and I work closely with many other folks in city departments. And it's that relationship building and trust and continued communications that I think have allowed us to be successful. I will say, and I think folks from the City of Greensboro would say this too, that in the very early days, we had to get used to our operating styles, our working styles. We had to learn to appreciate the benefits that we each brought to the table. And I think we've done that over the years. And I think that's why we are seeing the success that we're seeing today with this project. So I think that kind of wraps us up for that history. And we've got about 15 minutes if there are some questions from the audience. And maybe Chelsea, if you want to stop sharing the screen and we can see if anybody has questions. I don't know if Palmer, you want to kind of moderate that, or if we'll just
Yeah, I mean, I think we're such a small group that we can definitely just shout out your questions, but thank you. It's an incredibly complex project, and just congratulations on navigating all the trials and tribulations that it must have brought along the way. Since nothing like this had been done before, you had to kind of create the playbook as you went. And so much credit to you, Dabney, for sticking with it. Because I know there were probably times when it was like, is this really going to work? But
exactly.
It did. And I think your point made early on in the presentation about the return on investment, because that's something as the coalition tries to always make the case that you make these investments in public infrastructure, it will deliver, more than pay for itself. And this was a very expensive greenway. I mean, that price tag is definitely something that raises eyebrows. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what's been most successful in getting maybe some of the folks who are like, that's too much money to spend on a greenway to come on board and to really start to support the project?
Well, I would say certainly seeing that $650 million that's growing every year in private investment for this community has really shown people the value. We have Deep Roots Market is the first grocery store to open in downtown Greensboro in over 30 years. When it opened 10 years ago, right on the Greenway, was incredibly significant. We have apartment complexes, so we're attracting residential downtown. So I think that number in and of itself is a big supporter of the project. But I'll also say that when you see the engagement that we're seeing from the community in terms of the usage of the Greenway and the programming that Chelsea is putting together and the community's engagement with that, we're not even really measuring the health benefits that we are providing to the community. And we're not measuring some of those, we haven't specifically measured air quality. One of the projects, we didn't really mention this, but along that Western Branch section that's under construction, we have a stream, the College Branch stream, and we received some funding from the North Carolina Land and Water Fund to do some additional stream restoration there. And so we actually have some folks that are studying the health of that stream, and we're excited to look at those before and after numbers of what the health of that urban stream was before we did that restoration and what it will be in the future. So there's so many benefits even beyond the economic that have really proven to the community that it's a project worth doing, and it's something that Greensboro can be really proud of as a community at large.
Well, and I'm a Greensboro resident, so I get to benefit from this infrastructure. And not only that, it's the mental health benefits of really being in a beautiful space, because the landscaping, I know it takes a lot of work, but it really makes a difference. And that's a hard thing to measure, the mental health aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Joanna, what's your question?
Hey y'all. I was just wondering, I'm located in Western North Carolina, and of course we are seeing and have seen over the past number of months many of the projects that people have put a lot of time and investment to. It took one large weather event to, put a massive dent into a lot of that infrastructure. And people are, projects are being delayed now, but also looking at the repair of various projects. There's a lot of pressure being put on volunteer organizations to bear the brunt of those cleanups and getting these assets back online. So I was wondering, from a planning perspective, are you in your partnership looking at, or was there, when a large weather event disaster strikes, was that inbuilt from the ground up of your planning? Or is that something that, looking to the future, kind of y'all are taking more into consideration now, and that affects kind of, the plan and the partnership and the MOU that you have?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joanna. I will say that we did not specifically put in something related to a significant weather event, but we did recognize that a lot of what we were building on the downtown Greenway was maybe I'm hesitant to say to a higher standard than other city facilities, but with the things like our public art, we had things that were different than what the city typically does on a greenway. And so part of that $14 million that I mentioned that was raised from the private sector, $1 million of that was dedicated to an endowment that is held at our local community foundation. And the idea is that it would not supplant the city's maintenance responsibilities, but that it would augment and enhance those opportunities. So if there are significant events that happen, that money can be used from that maintenance endowment to help support that. Now, of course, when we're talking about the devastation that you experienced in Western North Carolina, that's well beyond, even what we have planned for, but we do have that maintenance endowment that is now grown to, it's about, I think, $1.6, $1.7 million now.
Are there any other questions, or even, Forrest, you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the economic impact, and two questions surrounding that. Number one, did you have a formal process, or do you have a formal process in evaluating that? And number two, did you include any of that in your initial projections when you first started this project way back when? And if so, how did you come up with that figure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wish we had a formal process. It's really anecdotally from us knowing the developments that have come in, talking to people who've done the developments about their motivation. We have a number of really significant projects that have happened downtown that had nothing to do with the downtown Greenway, like our Tanger Performing Arts Center, which was a $90 million project. I always joke and say I'd love to count that number in my number, but it really, the Greenway wasn't an impactful part of their decision to move where they did. So it's all done anecdotally from just what we know, what's happening in the community. We work closely with our downtown organization, Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, on that, and work closely with the city's economic development office to track that. And we didn't set a specific goal in the beginning in terms of what we hoped to facilitate or generate. But I will say we had learned from other communities that the average return on investment was for every dollar you spend on a greenway, you can expect $12 in return for that. And we've surpassed that number. But I don't know. That was a statistic from a long time ago, and I haven't read anything recently to know if there's a more sort of updated number. And of course, it really depends on the community. You know, you look at an example like the High Line in New York, and their numbers are very, very different than what our numbers are in Greensboro, and might be different from a smaller, more rural town in North Carolina. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thanks.
Great.
And I'll just add, kind of looking ahead, just last year, we updated our trail counters on the Downtown Greenway to eco counters. And we've really just kind of gotten them on board and getting all the metrics together and the dashboard ready. But the City of Greensboro also has Placer software. And so some of our folks in the planning division or planning department are hoping, you know, as we get all these things working together, to take our new eco counter data that records time and direction and distinguishes pedestrian versus cyclist and some additional data points we didn't have before, and then comparing it with Placer data sets where we can, I mean, it's scary, but you can track using cell phone data essentially where someone's coming from when they visit the Downtown Greenway, how long they spend, where they went to next, and there's some economic studies that you can build out from those data sets. So like longer term, we're really excited for what we can pull from like a day-to-day economic impact as opposed to only the private developments. But that's all beyond, that's above my head, but there's some smart people figuring out how to make that happen.
It's a really good question, Forrest. And also on the Great Trail State Coalition website, we do have a reference to a study from NC State University, ITRI, and it shows that for every dollar invested, there's $1.72 delivered every year. If that's an annual impact. So, and they look at health and business tax and, you know, a lot of different aspects. But that study is 2 urban and 2 rural greenways in North Carolina. And it was a few years ago, so it's a little bit dated, but it's still relevant. Joanna, what you got?
All right, one more question that just sprung up. You mentioned there's a grocery store, a brewery. You kind of mentioned a plethora of businesses that have sprung up along the corridor of the Greenway. Obviously, we all know that the business involvement is very important. But I'm just wondering how you have seen those businesses engage and continue to engage with, you know, the Greenway. Do you consider those continuing relationships to be important? And, you know, how important are the local businesses along the corridor of the Greenway? Are, you know, how important are they in kind of, you know, maintaining the stewardship of the Greenway?
Chelsea, why don't you take that one with your partnerships and the programming and volunteers?
Yeah, and Joanna, the short answer is absolutely. We see them as very positive, ongoing, productive relationships and partnerships. As Dabney mentioned, a majority of the businesses that have popped up along the Downtown Greenway chose to relocate or build or develop because of the Downtown Greenway as one of their decision factors. So they support us and we certainly support them. And through our programming, we're able to work with them a fair bit. So just like 2 examples from what you shared, Deep Roots Market, which is the co-op grocery store, their front step is off the Downtown Greenway. And so we actually host a Fresh and Foodie series coming up here in the next few weeks and few months, where we'll do like their kitchen staff will lead. I think we're doing a make and take guacamole making night. Last year we did a wine tasting, an organic chocolate tasting, a fair trade wine tasting, various sort of food related initiatives. We did one on how to bulk grocery shop and stretch your dollars, and learning how to weigh and tear your jars, and just how to shop in the rising cost of groceries. And so some really unique programming that you would not think anything to do with a Greenway typically. So we have good partnerships that way. Right now, Deep Roots Market, they have a really good hot and cold food bar and deli and smoothie bar inside. And their January smoothie of the month is the Greenway smoothie. It's pretty good. If you're in town, check it out. But so yeah, there's a lot of really good two-way support through those partnerships. Joymongers, they are one of our annual sponsors. The main site for our run and block party is the block directly in front of them, and they provide some additional space with use of their parking lot. They are the beverage provider, so you get your free beer after your run. And I mean, I could, all across the loop, there's all kinds of businesses. We host an annual volunteer appreciation event for specifically the Downtown Greenway volunteers. And we always look at a local, restaurant, bar, wine, coffee shop where we can host that. It'll be at Machete in a few weeks' time for this year, recognizing last year's volunteers. So from a day-to-day programmatic relationship, 100%, we have really good support, and vice versa. I can't think of an example of someone that isn't on our team, so to speak. If you want to add.
And I would just add that even businesses that were there before the Greenway was there, I can think of an example of the historic Magnolia House, which is a Green Book site here in Greensboro, and it operates as a bed and breakfast and serves meals, and is kind of a museum commemorating that really important history. And of course, they were here long before the Greenway was, but they have been one of our really good partners. We've hosted community meetings at Magnolia House, particularly when we were developing the Freedom Cornerstone, which was just down the road from them. We hosted our artist talks there. We've done a volunteer appreciation there. We've hosted some free fitness classes there. So it's in addition to the businesses that really move there because of the Greenway, we're also finding that existing businesses are wanting to take advantage of the Greenway presence as well.
What about from a fundraising perspective? Do you see business, the continued business support as being an important part of the funds that you raise on an annual basis, or is that, are they more kind of supportive in a programmatic sense?
So I'll let Chelsea talk about that, because we've sort of finished the capital fundraising for the Greenway, but of course, Parks and Rec is still raising funds annually to support the programming.
Yeah, so we shifted last year. In previous years, we had done singular event sponsorship. So someone would sponsor the annual run and block party, for instance, but really saw that there was a need and an interest to amp up our year-round programming and have people contribute in that way. So we shifted last year to an annual program sponsorship model. So for the calendar year, so we had, I think, 10 or 12 sponsors for 2024. We're closing a few still for this year. But many of those are, as I mentioned, Joymongers Brewing, many that are right adjacent to the Downtown Greenway, and others that are in what we call Midtown. They're, a few miles away from the Downtown Greenway. They're adjacent to the ANY Greenway, but they see the value in not only, Greenway and trails in our downtown core as being a hub of entertainment and activity, and wanting to be a part of what we're providing. And so, I want to say last year, those 10 or I think we had 10 sponsors last year, and we came in, excuse me, about 14,000 in sponsorship for the annual year. And I will say that while with the City of Greensboro, in a unique model where we don't currently, or didn't have a need for an annual programming budget in the city's budget. So everything that I put on with programming is through funds raised via these sponsorships and our run registrations for the run and block party every year. So it's a very unique model in terms of municipal management, but we see a lot of support annually through those sponsorships from local businesses, neighbors, and otherwise.
Well, let's take one last question from Terry, and then I know it's 1 o'clock, so people need to move
Hey.
on.
Thanks so much for that last explanation because I am most interested in the 3 events that you have on the trail. Can I find more about that on the website?
Yeah, to a degree, we have the dates and a little info posted on those. But please, if you want to reach out directly to me and to anyone on the call or
Okay,
watching the
thank-
recording. So
Thanks.
I know the slide went away at the end, but downtowngreenway.org is our website. Please ooh and ah. We launched it in November after a year of hard work from our previous 12-year-old website. So you'll find contact info from myself and Dabney. And even more about what we've covered on history, infrastructure reuse, our impact, and happy to connect directly on some of the events.
I appreciate you. You're very inspirational.
Wonderful.
Well, what y'all have done is amazing. Nothing short of amazing. It is truly a gift to the community. Thank you for navigating all the challenges along the way and for sharing your story. So it's definitely one for the books for sure. A great resource. So thank you for being available and for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for
Thank
joining.
All right. Well, have a great week, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, Palmer.
Bye.
Bye-bye.